Hi everyone, can you hear me? Let's see. Yeah, I think you should be able to hear me. Let me know if you can hear me. Let me pull up the comments. Hopefully I can see them. How are you this evening? Feliz día, feliz sábado. And most definitely if you celebrate El Grito and 16 de septiembre. You can hear? Uh-oh. Let me see. Oh, yes, you can. Awesome. Yay. I'm using a new for tonight's live stream concert, since I'm going to do everything or mostly everything live. I'm using a different way of doing the sound. So please do let me know and give me feedback if you can about the sound. I'm going to wait a little bit before I start, but I just want to check in and say thank you to the Esperanza Peace and Justice Center for presenting tonight's program that is dedicated to El Corrido, one of the most, to me, amazing and exciting genres of Mexican music. And definitely it's just it's such a way of also getting in touch with history and with our roots in a perspective that is not from textbooks, is not from the perspective of those who usually win wars, right? It's directly from the perspective of the people, which is a very valuable and interesting form of communication in song. And to me, El Corrido has become, because I have to say that when I was young, I didn't really give much importance, or I guess it didn't really call me, probably because the melodies, they are in a way repetitive, and there's this monotonous feel to it, right? And when I was young, I wanted to be exciting, and I wanted the melodies to just like go all over the place and fascinate me. And now, as I, started to grow up and see and understand the deeper significance of El Corrido, I'm just absolutely in love, to the point that I'm writing a corrido for my grandma, and it's important to have that in our belief system, that we can tell our story. Like, we don't have to wait for anyone to tell the story of our people. I'm going to thank you, Lucerito, mi vida, mi cielo, mi hermana preciosa. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much for watching. Santi, Amelia, Megan, thank you all so much. And Viva Mexico, Angelito, yes. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So in this, I'm going to be as brief as I can in the corrido, because there's so much to cover. And usually for things like this, I was, when I was talking to Nicholas Frank, I was like, every time that I go back to El Corrido and visit everything that is important and all the kinds of corridos that there are, I feel like it has to be its own like 4-piece series, or at least, because there's so much to cover, and everything to me is interesting. The challenge sometimes is that, there's never enough time. But I would like to start with talking about coplas. And I think I'm going to go to the to this the Britannica encyclopedia says that coplas in a song, in singing, consists of improvised verses of satire, love, or piety. The verse form varies, but it's frequently a 4 or 7 line stanza of 8 syllable lines. The music is in 3/4 or 3/8 time. So definitely coplas is the beginning of el corrido. Coplas is like the a parent of el corrido, and is something that we inherited from when the Spanish arrived in Mexico. And sometimes, you know, it's interesting to see and to hear all the songs that were before corridos, because definitely you can notice and you can see some music and some sort of like phrasing that is very similar to corridos, but is not quite there yet. So I'm very excited to kind of get through this journey with you guys, and thank you all again for tuning in celebración de las Fiestas Patrias y Latinx Heritage Month. And here we go. I'm gonna sing unas coplas that are actually, some people call this el corrido del conejo, because it is one of the oldest songs that are the family of corridos. Like, this is the beginning of corridos. And when was this? So this coplas, there's an author. Let me just unravel. That says that this music was starting in the 18th century, and definitely this song El Conejo is one of them. It's a beautiful copla, and I hope you like it. Let me know if you can hear the guitar and if you can hear my voice and everything, because again, I'm trying something new.
Mi amor es como el conejo, sentido como el venado. No come zacate viejo, ni tampoco muy trillado. Come zacatito verde, de la punta serenado.
Okay, good. Thank you, Megan.
Pavo real que eres correo y que vas a Real del Oro. Pavo real si te preguntan, pavo real diles que lloro. Lagrimitas de mi sangre por una mujer que adoro. Soy como el pájaro verde que en la luna me detengo. La palabra que me diste en el corazón la tengo, que ya no me lo cumpliste y que me la cumplas vengo. Cuando paso por tu casa, hermosa prenda querida, si te despierto cantando, vuélvete a quedar dormida, que yo paso por tu casa dándole gusto a la vida. Por ahí va la despedida en el llano y lo parejo. Ya me vuelvo a mi guarida, no más un recuerdo dejo. A toditas mis amigas, el corrido del conejo. A toditas mis amigas, el corrido del conejo.
super cute little song, no? About a rabbit. Oh, and that's another thing that I forgot. So because I'm doing this live, I think that I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of do it as I used to, and just kind of tell you a little bit about what the song is about. And if you're really interested, I can try to get you the lyrics so that you can look up the translation. Google Translate now is amazing, and it pretty much, does it for you. But yeah, El Conejo, the lyrics is just about, like, it's about a little rabbit and saying that it's kind of like the songs, the traditional songs that we still hear from Veracruz, it's that kind of style. Definitely those are coplas as well. It's talking about nature. It's talking about just, simple, in a simple way. There's one verse that is saying, if I go by your house, you beautiful being, and if I wake you up with my singing, just go ahead and stay asleep, because I'm just passing by. And that's pretty much it. Like the lyrics are not very strong. It's just the beginning, right? But we can see and we can hear, like, that's the beginning of el corrido. Like, it has elements. El 3-4, the 3-4 is just like we can hear it. Tomorrow I'm gonna sing another kind of coplas, so that we can change it up a little bit for those who watch it twice. And tonight I'm gonna continue with one of my most favorite corridos. This corrido is called Corrido de los Oprimidos, and the lyrics are about this is the beginning, like this is so this person, this historian that has dedicated his life to, or part of his life to, research of corridos and how to kind of preserve them, divides corridos in three main phases, I guess. One is during the Porfiriato, right? That's when the corrido really took the form of what we know, and that's when the corrido really, really started to get strong as a way of for people to just use it and start, telling what they felt. And thank you. I'm glad that it sounds good. Thank you. And so this corrido is one of the first ones that is also so within corridos, within these three phases of corridos, we have also some subdivisions, I guess, of the different kinds of corridos, right? So we have historic corridos, we have corridos that talk about brave people, we have corridos that talk about naturally the revolution, which is when the corrido really took its grandiosity. Like, that's when it really peaked. And it includes, all these corridos that are also after the Mexican Revolution, Movimiento Agrarista, Movimiento Cristero, and then also there are corridos about that are more melodic. I'll sing one of those as well, and they're more similar, I guess, to what we hear as rancheras. There are corridos about fusilamientos, people. Sometimes that was the only way that people would be able to say how someone was killed, right? And they would go into detail, because sometimes they were the ones who would voice what really happened. And within and then we get to the corridos that are more like satire or accidents or tragedies. It's just really, really interesting. And of course, time passes by, and in the 70s we got a new different kind of corridos, which is the narco corrido. So we'll kind of like tap into a little bit each one of the main styles, but definitely we're gonna stay more in the traditional. And of course we're gonna talk a little bit about the nuevo corrido, the corridos that my 23-year-old nephew listens to, and it's quite interesting as well how music kind of keeps on going, and the evolution of it. So anyway, going back to this Corrido de los Oprimidos, this is a historic corrido, and here we go. A ver si me veo un poquito.
Voy a cantar un corrido de esos que hacen padecer, y les suplico, señores, me perdonen por favor. Desde que los españoles vinieron a este lugar, quedamos esclavizados sin tener tierra ni hogar. 3 siglos largos, señores, el indio triste sufrió, hasta que luego en dolores la libertad lo alumbró. Del cura de Guanajuato toditos se han de acordar, murió como buen soldado por darnos la libertad. Pero el 21 el gobierno la independencia nos dio, quedando los españoles dueños de nuestra nación. Todas las tierras tomaron y al indio nada quedó, sin pensar que por ser dueños durante 11 años peleó. Por eso el indio ha sufrido miserias, hambre y dolor, esperando le devuelvan sus tierras que tanto amó. Ya mejor le pide al cielo que lo quite de vivir, con eso que mejor muerto ya no tiene que sufrir.
Qué bonito, ¿no? What? I'm gonna put some of the comments. A ver si los pueden ver. Ah, beautiful. Thank you, Amelia. You're watching under the full moon on the historic west side. That's beautiful. I'm gonna try to show some of the comments, or most of the comments. Sorry if I missed some, but gracias. Okay, post PW and just be careful and yay. So I'm gonna move towards so you can see, you know, it's the lyrics are just so interesting because you can kind of hear about how this is during the Porfiriato, right? And something interesting to notice is that I'm now reading a book that actually I gave to my father-in-law, who is an avid reader, and I think Sandy and Danny are watching, and he read both books, of course, you know, like way before me, and I'm just, you know, probably still in chapter 2 of the first one. They're big books, but one of the things that is interesting, and this book is about the life of Porfirio Diaz, and it's a very interesting and almost like a must read, because to understand all of this movement from the independence to the Revolución Mexicana, you know, you kind of have to understand also what Porfirio Diaz was for Mexico and his history and where he was coming from and why he became what he became. So after the Mexican independence, you know, there's a lot of it's not like they had peace right away, right? Like it's not that in the country they had Mexican independence and then it's just like, great, now, you know, now it's all good. Well, no, because as we can hear in this corrido, they are saying, well, yeah, I mean, sure, El Cura de Guanajuato, Miguel Hidalgo, came and helped to build this independence, but then everything was still ruled by the Spanish that stayed in Mexico, and everything, all the land and everything was still, they were still the rulers of the land. And this corrido of the oprimidos is beautiful because you can really hear the voice, you know, of El Pueblo during the before and during the Porfiriato. I'm going to show a video. So I do have a pre-recorded song that this amazing musician from San Antonio, Jaime Ramírez, an accordionist. He's a piano player mainly, but he also plays the accordion amazingly. So I'm going to show this video of this corrido that is also one of my favorites, called La Cárcel de Canane.
Voy a dar un pormenor de lo que
querido Juan. And now I'm going to sing un corrido lírico, and it's one of my most favorite corridos. Not because of Villa so much, because I'm more of a Zapata kind of person, but yeah. So I'm going to sing. We're here live on Facebook and YouTube, and I'm just going live on Instagram for a little bit, and hopefully on Instagram you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yo soy soldado de Pancho Villa, de sus dorados soy el más fiel. Nada me importa perder la vida, si es cosa de hombres morir por él. De aquella gran división del norte, algunos cuantos quedamos ya, subiendo cerros, bajando montes, siempre buscando con quién pelear. Ya llegó, ya está aquí Pancho Villa con su gente, con sus dorados valientes, que por él han de morir. Adiós villistas que allá en Celaya su sangre dieron con gran valor. Adiós mi linda ciudad Chihuahua, Parral y Juárez, Lerdo y Torreón. Ya el Centinela pasó revista, el campamento ya se durmió. Adiós les dice este villista, ay, nos veremos otra ocasión. Ya llegó, ya está aquí Pancho Villa con su gente, con sus dorados valientes, que por él han de morir.
Es linda, ¿no? Esta canción. Ok, ya nada más era una cancioncita para Instagram y para invitarlos. Wow, desde Laredo, qué bonito. Perdón, estoy aquí un poco leyendo los. Estamos. A ver, voy a leer unos cuantos. Silvia Vargas, saludos desde Laredo, Texas. Los voy a poner también. Right? Yes. Corridos are so. They're so simple in a way, right? It's almost like anyone can just go and sing them, and we all have a connection, a special connection to this kind of music, because it, in a way, it's in the recent history of our ancestors. It's in recent generations. I know that, for example, in my case, My grandmother from my mother's side, she was born in 1898, and she naturally went through the Mexican Revolution, and she was born in a little tiny town in the state of Jalisco, in the south of Jalisco, called Tuscacuesco, almost in Colima. It's in the south, and she would tell my mother, who was her only child, that when the revolutionaries came to her town, and it was the Villistas, that they pretty much wiped everything and everyone out with any belongings, even though they were so poor. Just any belongings that they had, they just took them with them, from food to clothes, even to toys. My grandma used to tell my mother that my grandma only had one doll, and this doll was also taken by the galletas, which is a term that they used, and we don't hear it very often now. We only use the rieleras or las adelitas, but they also call them galletas. And of course, Dania, yes, of course, this revolution. I mean, and we are talking about the reason why we hear so many men in this corridos is because that's, it's a different town. It's a different time. It's a time where everything was towards, like very male oriented. But of course we know that there are women in the revolution. We have the rieleras, and there's a super famous corrido about the rieleras. Yo soy rielera, mañana se los canto. Tengo mi Juan, beautiful corrido también. We have La Delita that we'll play later on, and they're people that were absolutely important to the history of this revolution, from the independence of Mexico all the way to 1930s, which is kind of like when it all kind of stopped. So I'm going to continue with La Cucaracha, and La Cucaracha is just a corrido originally, and it's a tiny little song, the original one. So here we go.
Sopilotes y un ratón
Hi. I'm gonna sing a song that most of us have heard probably. And it's called Carabina 3030.
Carabina 3030 que los rebeldes portaban y decían los maderistas que con ellas no mataban. Carabina 3030 que los rebeldes portaban y decían los federales que con ellas no mataban. Con mi 3030 me voy a marchar, a engrosar las filas de la rebelión. Si mi sangre pide, mi sangre les doy, por los habitantes de nuestra nación. Gritaba Francisco Villa, donde te hallas, Argumedo, ven, párate aquí adelante, tú que nunca tienes miedo. Gritaba Francisco Villa, donde te hallas, Argumedo, ven, párate aquí adelante, tú que nunca tienes miedo. Con mi 3030 me voy a marchar, engrosar las filas de la rebelión. Si mi sangre piden, mi sangre les doy, por los habitantes de nuestra nación. Ya nos vamos pa' Chihuahua, ya se va tu amado santo. Si me quiebra alguna bala, ve a llorarme al campo santo. Ya nos vamos pa' Chihuahua, ya se va tu amado santo. Si me quiebra alguna bala, ve a llorarme al campo santo. Con mi 3030 me voy a marchar, a engrosar las filas de la rebelión. Si mi sangre pide, mi sangre les doy, por los habitantes de nuestra nación. Carabina 3030 que los rebeldes portaban y decían los maderistas que con ellas no mataban.
Hola, Ocelotl. ¿Cómo te has estado sintiendo? I hope you're doing better. Wow, so many stories. I would love to hear these stories about De La Rosa Mónica. We should do like we should hopefully soon, or at some point, or if not, we can do it on Zoom. But I would love to hear these stories about our families, how they survived the Mexican Revolution and how they came for them, because definitely, I mean, they were all over the place, and that's one of the things that sometimes we don't, or at least I didn't used to think about, when I was younger. And of course in Mexico, we kind of romanticize the Mexican Revolution in a way, and we often forget that it was war, and a lot of people died, and a lot of people were suffering, and to be able to maintain that level of fight, there's a lot of poverty and all around the country, and definitely we still know those stories. So yeah, I would love to hear those stories. De La Rosa, Mónica de la Rosa. Anita is Ana Pintor is a friend from desde la primaria, ¿verdad? Sí, desde la primaria. From elementary. That was probably just a few years ago. Una bohemia, exacto, así es. Frijolitos pintos. Anyway, I'm gonna move and play La Adelita. Such a great song. And tomorrow I'm gonna sing. La Adelita tiene tantas versiones, and it's sometimes they do it short, sometimes it's long, because as you know, all of these corridos, I mean, they have they're so long, some of them, and La Adelita definitivamente es una de ellas. So here we go.
En lo alto de la abrupta serranía, acampados se encontraba un regimiento y una moza que valiente lo seguía, locamente enamorada de un sargento popular entre la tropa era Adelita, la mujer que el sargento idolatraba, porque además de valiente era bonita y hasta el mismo coronel la respetaba. Pues sabía que decía aquel de tanto la quería. Adelita se llama la joven a quien yo quiero y no puedo olvidar. En el mundo yo tengo una rosa que con el tiempo la voy a cortar. Si Adelita quiera ser mi novia y si Adelita fuera mi mujer, le compraría un vestido de seda para llevarla a bailar al cuartel. Una noche que la escolta regresaba, conduciendo entre sus filas al sargento, en la voz de una mujer que sollozaba, la plegaria se escuchó en el campamento. Al oírla el sargento temeroso de perder para siempre a su adorada, ocultando su emoción bajo el embozo, a su amada le cantó de esta manera. Pues sabía que decía aquel que tanto la quería. Si Adelita se fuera con otro, le seguiría la huella sin cesar. Si por mar en un buque de guerra y si por tierra en un tren militar. Si Adelita se fuera con otro, le seguiría la huella sin cesar. Si por mar en un buque de guerra y si por tierra en un tren militar. Y si por tierra en un tren militar. Y si por tierra en un tren militar.
Hola otra vez. I'm just gonna put some of the comments. Anita. Yes, let's make it happen, Monica. I am totally down. Thank you, Joe. Mi sobrinita preciosa. Un abracito, Lucerito preciosa, te quiero mucho. So, I want to sing a song that, I mean, there's so many corridos. Literally, like, I've been it's hard to choose because all of them have so many stories that you don't think about. Tomorrow I'm gonna sing one about bootlegging. They would contraband tequila into the States, and this corrido is absolutely fascinating because it's a story of the person who wrote it, is telling the story of so we were farmers, and it was not working out, so we decided to start smuggling tequila. And it's an I never, of course, if people were doing all kinds of things to get alcohol into the States, contraband tequila. So in the 20s, apparently, there's some people doing it, and this corrido is absolutely fascinating. Also, there are corridos, for example, about tragedies and accidents, and it just takes your mind to a place, and to, it's almost like reading a book, because you start imagining somebody else's life, and how, of course, they had a different some similarities, but different perspectives. They were living through a different time. And for example, this next song that I'm going to sing, this corrido is called Corridos de los Deportados. And pretty much, I mean, it's the same story, right? It's the same story that we hear of pain and of leaving. The only difference here, or some of the differences, are, in this case, they mention that they are traveling to the north, and they're immigrating because of the Mexican Revolution. And apparently during that time, there's not a big issue. Like, they were able to tell the border patrols, or the immigration officers, that they were coming to stay for a little while, because this corrido talks about it. And then same questions. Do you have money? Are you bringing money into the nation? Things like that. And then the corrido keeps talking about, like how difficult it was to cross, and how long it was, because they were crossing by train, right? So the corrido goes on and on about, how difficult it was, and how the person who is telling the story is like, I almost went back, and I almost just went back because I was really, really having a hard time. And then it goes into how eventually they were like, okay, now you need to leave and you need to go back. And this part of the corrido talks about how this great cloud of dust is walking around, and is like, oh, of course, because back then, they were being transported back walking, right? So imagine all of these, I don't know how many people, but if it was a lot of like dust, if it created a lot of dust, it must have been at least 100. And it's just describing how they were, being brought back to the border so that they could cross. And it's just fascinating, to hear these stories from it's almost like our ancestors are telling us these stories. We don't have to hear them, in a book, or nobody has to tell us about them. We can learn from them directly. Anyway, so it's a long corrido, so bear with me. Go get a tequilita, or if you don't drink, go get a topo chico, vasito de agua, because this is one of those.
Voy a contarles, señores, todo lo que yo sufrí. Desde que dejé mi patria, por venir a este país. Serían las 10 de la noche, Serían las 10 de la noche, comenzó un tren a silbar. Oí que dijo mi madre, ahí viene ese tren ingrato que a mi hija se va a llevar. Adiós mi madre querida, adiós mi madre querida, échame tu bendición. Ya me voy al extranjero, ya me voy al extranjero, donde no hay revolución. Corre, corre maquinita, corre, corre maquinita, vámonos de la estación. No quiero ver a mi madre, no quiero ver a mi madre por su hija del corazón. Llegamos por Pina Juárez, llegamos por Pina Juárez, y allí fue mi apuración. ¿Que dónde vas? ¿Que de dónde vienes? ¿Que cuánto dinero tienes para entrar a esta nación? Señores, traigo dinero, señores, traigo dinero para poder emigrar. Tu dinero nada vale, tu dinero nada vale, te tenemos que bañar. Ay, mis paisanos queridos, ay, mis paisanos queridos, yo les platico nomás que me estaban dando ganas, que me estaban dando ganas de volverme para atrás. Crucé por fin la frontera, crucé por fin la frontera y en reenganche salí. Ay, mis queridos paisanos, ay, mis queridos paisanos, fue mucho lo que sufrí. Los güeros son muy maloras, los güeros son muy maloras, se valen de la ocasión. Y a todos los mexicanos, y a todos los mexicanos nos tratan sin compasión. Hoy traen la gran polvadera, hoy traen la gran polvadera y sin consideración. Mujeres, niños y ancianos nos llevan a la frontera, nos echan de la nación. Adiós paisanos queridos, adiós paisanos queridos, ya nos van a deportar. Pero no somos bandidos, pero no somos bandidos, venimos a camelear. Los espero allá en mi tierra, los espero allá en mi tierra, ya no hay más revolución. Vámonos cuates queridos, seremos bien recibidos en nuestra bella nación.
It's incredible to think that this corrido was written during the Mexican Revolution, and seriously talks a lot about the same, the same feeling, rather, than anything else. It's just that it's interesting, and from a, I guess, ethnomusicology perspective, or from the perspective of ethnomusicology, is just beautiful to see how we can connect our stories, and of course we can definitely feel here in San Antonio or in the border, there's a lot of corridos that are corridos de la frontera, and again, you know, we listen to these stories that are so rich in our history, in what they mean for our culture. So yeah, I'm going to sing. I'm gonna keep it short and sweet because, you know, I think it works better. I'm gonna finish with a super sad corrido. I mean, it's sad because it kind of tells you the story of how Emiliano Zapata went. And again, it's one of those corridos that have, you know, pages and pages of verses, and some of them going to embellishing who was Emiliano Zapata and talking about what he fought for, bit of his story, and some others talk about how he died, which I find super interesting because we forget how many how they betrayed each other so in so many ways. And of course Emiliano Zapata was not the exception of these betrayals. And the story says that that this general Pablo Gonzalez gave one of his subordinates the order to pretend and tell Zapata that he was going to switch sides. You know how all during the Mexican Revolution people switched sides, and, you know, sometimes they were with Carranza, sometimes they were with Villa, sometimes they were with Zapata, sometimes, you know, like they just switched sides. It was I guess in a survival way, and also, you know, politics. So in this case, this guy Guajardo convinces Zapata that he's going to switch sides, and he says, you know, we'll see you there in Morelos, in this town called Chinameca, and we'll just seal the deal, and my men, you know, my people will be serving your people. And he goes into saying, the corrido goes into saying how they meet in Chinameca, and one of the parts of the corrido that really touches me is when it says that Emiliano Zapata, you know, opens his arms to embrace Guajardo as a welcoming gesture, and, you know, and the corrido talks about how moments later he was betrayed and killed by this man. So it's just, again, really, corridos, I know that they're not super exciting, or seemingly exciting. To me, they're super exciting, but it's just like, it's history. It's our history. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. And I want to say that that it's worth mentioning. And before I do this corrido, it's worth mentioning. Tomorrow I'm going to go a little more into it, but it's worth mentioning to kind of close. So this corrido would belong to the Movimiento Agrarista, right? So it's towards the end of the Mexican Revolution. Naturally, the revolution had so many branches, right? After the Mexican Revolution, all of these movements started because naturally there was no peace. And so corridos after 1930, corridos continued to be written naturally, and some of them were to sort of give a second view of history, right? And sometimes they would rewrite stories, and they would tell different perspectives, and they would also tell stories that for some reason were not being told yet. So that's a lot of them, you know, about the Mexican Revolution and all of these wars. And then in the 70s, something amazing happened. That was the corrido of one of the corridos that changed the history again of corrido of the genre. And this corrido was written, early 70s. And tomorrow I'll sing it, porque ya ahorita ya se nos fue el tiempo, pero es aquel que va salieron de San Isidro, procedentes de Tijuana. Ya saben cuál es. So that corrido absolutely changed the story and the history, really. Because of that corrido, narco corridos were born. And that's a whole story, another layer of stories and drama, right? And death. To me, it's a little scary. Narco corridos are, we know that a lot of musicians were killed, persecuted, and narco corridos is a genre that definitely is a little, it's interesting, but it's a little scary. And these days we have a corrido tumbado. That is something that, my nephew listens to, and that's another story. But we have to say goodnight, and I'm going to sing a little bit of this Corrido de la Muerte de Emiliano Zapata to say thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of Noche Azul, Caminos del Corrido. If you want to hear it again tomorrow in Spanish and español, va a estar mañana a las 3 de la tarde.
Escuchen, señores, oigan el corrido de un triste acontecimiento, pues en Chinameca fue muerto a mansalva Zapata el gran insurrecto. Abril de 1919 en la memoria quedarás del campesino como una mancha en la historia. Campanas de Villa Ayala, porque tocan tan dolientes, es que ya murió Zapata y era Zapata un valiente. Don Pablo González ordena a Guajardo que le finja rendimiento, y al jefe Zapata disparan sus armas al llegar al campamento. Guajardo dice a Zapata: me le rindo con mi tropa, en Chinameca lo espero, tomaremos una copa. Arroyito revoltoso, ¿qué te dijo aquel clavel? Dice que Zapata no muere y que ha de volver. Abraza a Emiliano al felón Guajardo en prueba de su amistad. Sin pensar el pobre que aquel pretolario lo iba a sacrificar. Y tranquilo se dirige a la hacienda con su escolta. Los traidores le disparan por la espalda, quemarropa. Jilguerito mañanero de las cumbres soberano, mira qué forma tan triste ultimaron a Emiliano. Cayó del caballo el jefe Zapata y también sus asistentes. Así en Chinameca perdieron la vida un puñado de valientes. Señores, ya me despido, que no tengan novedad. ¿Cuál hombre murió Zapata por dar tierra y libertad? A la orilla del camino había una blanca azucena, A la tumba de Zapata la llevé como una ofrenda. A la tumba de Zapata la llevé como una ofrenda.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for joining us. And tomorrow we will see you here at 3 p.m. If you have anyone that may be interested in listening to some of this beautiful music, beautiful corridos, por favor, déjenles saber. Y muchísimas gracias. Gracias a todos los que se conectaron. Muchas gracias. Que tengan muy bonita noche.